Great. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's special event with Opera Theater of St. Louis. This is the second of 4 presentations with the Opera Theater of St. Louis that they are presenting through University City Public Library. The following 2 events will happen on the next 2 Thursdays, also at 7 p.m. So please be sure to join us these next 2 Thursdays as well. Just before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone to keep their Zoom accounts muted during the presentation in order to prevent any extra noise. If you do have any questions during the presentation that you don't want to forget, please go ahead and put them in the chat function at the bottom of your screens, or else just hold on to your questions until the very end, where we'll have a live question and answer session. All right, without further ado, I would like to present Ingrid Neuefeind. She is a longtime University City resident and teacher. She is also a violinist for the St. Louis Philharmonic Orchestra. So she brings with her all of her expertise tonight. Ingrid, we're so happy to have you here with us. Welcome.
Oops. You probably have heard this beautiful aria before. It is from the opera Gianni Schicchi. And Angela Riley sang this last fall in a concert produced in a collaboration between Opera Theater and St. Louis Public Radio. She is at the beginning of a promising career. She is a graduate of Artist in Training and was a Jardine Young Artist in 2020. These are 2 programs of opera theater that further young aspiring singers and were a springboard for an illustrious career for many. While she was in California, she performed with Los Angeles Philharmonic and had other engagements. She was also in the Christmas Carol video and now sings the role of Mabel in The Pirates of Penzance, a shortened version that was filmed and shown to hundreds of school children. It is available virtually from the website of Opera Theater. Hello, everyone. My name is Ingrid Neuefeind, and I thank Lindsay for her kind introduction. I love Opera Theater. My husband and I have been enthusiastic subscribers and supporters for over 30 years, and I've been a docent for almost as long. Today, I'm going to introduce Puccini's opera, Gianni Schicchi. I will briefly talk about the composer Giacomo Puccini, about his style, about the libretto by Gioacchino Forzano, and then I will guide you through the opera and let you enjoy the excerpts. At the end, there will be time for questions and answers. Generations of Puccinis were musicians in Lucca, in now I can't find the name now, in Toscana. Giacomo Puccini followed in their footsteps, playing services in the cathedral and other churches, until one day he saw Verdi's Aida, his first opera. He decided that moment to become an opera composer. And what a composer he became. He studied in Milano, the center of opera in Italy, still today, I think. His style is influenced by contemporary composers, the older ones, Wagner and Verdi, the younger ones, same age as him, Debussy and even Varese, though he distanced himself from him. He became a master of creating an atmosphere and characterizing people and their feelings. He invents beautiful and expressive melodies accompanied by a big orchestra. He uses wind instruments sparingly, but to great effect in special situations. His operas are through composed, and he uses a big orchestra. Through composed meaning the arias blend in and out of the flow of the music. And the style is overall more romantic than Verismo, but you can even hear quite modern 20th century style sounds, like dissonant sounds, even bitonal, in his later years, like here in Gianni Schicchi. He also uses leitmotifs, motifs or themes that reoccur throughout the opera and give it an organic feel. Here we have a list of the most known and beloved operas. I think Opera Theater did Bohème at least twice. I'm not sure they did Manon, but Tosca and Madame Butterfly several times. They also did La Rondine and Sua Angelica. After all these operas, Puccini was searching for a new form, and he composed Il Trittico, or triptych, 3 one-act operas to be played as a unity. Well, we know the term trittico or triptych more from the arts. 3-part paintings often found in churches, a middle one and 2 side paintings, and they have a connection with a theme. Here, there is not a theme, rather than more contrasting operas. The tragic drama opera Il Tabarro, very dark, and Sua Angelica, religious melodrama, Gianni Schicchi, the comic opera. I think it was a little bit similar to Verdi, who also towards the end of his life finally wanted to write a comic opera. So, because in all of these other operas, the heroines were always tragic heroines and always made us cry. So now he wants to have a fun work. He composed it during World War I, and he was very apolitical. But he had a little trouble to premiere it in Europe because the war and also the influenza was still raging. So he was quite happy to accept an invitation by the Metropolitan Opera of New York to premiere it. And it was premiered there in December 1918. Without his presence, it was impossible to travel. And then in Italy, the first performance was in January the following year, 1919, in Rome. So all 3 operas were quite well received, but Gianni Schicchi was the favorite from the beginning. And it is nowadays often performed and is the one Opera Theater is presenting. Sometimes it's paired with one of the other operas or with Cavalleria Rusticana by Leon Cavalla, who was a co-student of his. In Gioacchino Forzano, Puccini had found an ideal librettist. Both men were men of the theater, and they collaborated very well. Puccini was very involved in the writing because the words inspired him. Just like opera theater, he took great interest in singers that could act. He also gave elaborate stage directions. Forzano based the libretto on a few lines in Dante's Inferno in Book 30 about a real-life incident where Schicchi was defrauding the family, the Busotti family of their heritage. Dante condemned Schicchi to hell. Forzano added the love story of Rinuccio and Loretta, and also invented distant relatives, most of them cousins. Here I'm using a recording of a performance of the Royal Opera House in London. Antonio Papano was conducting, and Richard Jones was the stage director. He's quite famous and well known, and sometimes controversial. And then the singers were Lucio Gallo, Ekaterina Ciorina, Francesco Di Muro, and the old aunt, Zita, is Elena Zilio. Gianni Schicchi, opera in one act. We are in Firenze, Florence, Italy, in the house of wealthy Buoso Donati. This production is set in the 1950s, not in the 1299 when the actual thing happened. The characters are Gianni Schicchi. He's a newcomer to Florence from the countryside. He's clever but penniless. Loretta is his daughter. Zita, Buoso's cousin, or called La Vecchia, the old one. And Rinuccio, her nephew. Her nephew is in love with Loretta and Loretta with Rinuccio. But they cannot get together because Zita demands a dowry, which Schicchi cannot provide. And then there are more cousins and their offspring and the kids of the offspring. And since it's a story about a will, we also need a lawyer, a notary. This is Florence, the golden Firenze, the place of the action. I prepared a few slides that list some of the musical means that Puccini uses to make the action come alive and to get us emotionally involved. If you have ever seen Puccini, it's very hard not to get emotionally involved. You can see it several times, and in the right moment, you begin to cry. At least I do. So I invite you to use these listening hints if you are so inclined. When the curtain opens, we find the relatives of Buoso Donati assembled in his bedroom, expecting him to die, but totally ignoring him. They are having a good time, expressed in the music by a lively leitmotif, dia, 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 which turns into a mourning, woeful motif after he dies. Dia, 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 so lower and slower. This motif you'll find more often throughout the whole opera. This is one of them, there are others too. So, let us go to the Royal Opera House. Soon it becomes clear that they all are mainly interested in inheriting Warsa's wealth. They worry about a rumor in Sinia, a neighboring town, that Warsaw left everything to the local monastery. But they think they might find a way to change the world if they find it. When Rinuccio finally finds it, they read it with great eagerness and suspense. The suspense is crafted by Puccini by starting with very, very softly in a pianissimo and having the violins play a tremolo and asks the violins even play very close to the bridge so to make a little scratchy sound, which sounds even more eerie. And then he starts getting louder and louder and louder in downward running scales. And then until it's full sound with the full orchestra, fortissimo. And it ends with 3 kind of solemn chords. Do, do, do. So the rumor is true. Full of envy, they imagine the monks, how they are feasting, and how the people will ridicule them. Rinuccio is especially anxious to inherit because his happiness depends on it. It would allow him to marry his beloved Loretta. So he tries to convince them that Schicchi is the man to ask for help, since they cannot come up a plan for themselves. He says he's astute and he knows the law. In a march-like aria, resplendent with trumpets, he sings his praises. He compares them to the greats of Florence who came from the countryside and were not born in Florence and made Florence great. I think Puccini's irony is shining through there. So Gianni arrives, but soon a major quarrel develops. When he's about to leave, the music comes to a complete stop. And then, in a big musical contrast, Loretta, accompanied by a harp and doubling violins, doubling meaning singing the same, playing the same as the singer sings. She sings her expressive angelic aria, O mio babbino caro, my dear father, begging him to reconsider. And he does. Oops.
Basta con gli odi, lo sgomento e desolato. Cosa donati, certo è migliorato.
Amore mio, perché si pallido?
Me lo zio.
Viene parla.
Amore, amore, quanto dolore.
Quanto dolore.
Andato, perché stando alla non rivale, ti recitano meglio d'un giornale. Comprendo il dolore di tanta perdita. Mio l'anima commossa. E la perdita è stata proprio grossa. Son cose, ma come si fa? In questo mondo una cosa si perde, una si trova, si perde buoso. Ma c'è l'eredità.
Sicuro, ai frati!
Diseredati!
Diseredati, sì, diseredati! Perché il caro canto, figlio dello figliolo, e lo di ritorno, io non dovi la mia fame, ad una verità! Io lavo!
Io non voglio. Brava la vecchia, brava, per la dote sacrifichi mia figlia e tuo nipote. Brava la vecchia, brava, vecchiata, corri la figlia, sogni la sfidata del vecchio.
Signor Giovanni, rimanete un momento, invece di sbrecare, dateli il testamento. Cercate di salvarci, a voi non può mancare un'idea portentosa, una trovata, un rimedio, un ripiego, un espediente.
Ma pro di quella gente, niente, niente, niente.
Amore
datemi il testamento.
So he reads the testament or will and decides to impersonate Warsaw and then dictate a new testament. The money will be divided evenly, they agreed. Each of them gets the desired farm and the lands around it. But then they cannot agree about the big items, the mule, the house, and the sawmills at Sinia, where the monastery is also the neighboring town. So they leave it up to Gianni Schicchi to decide who will get it. Then they send for a notary. The notary arrives, and the three ladies. Before sorry, we need all the preparations for the notary. The three ladies dress Gianni in Boso's garments, and they flatter him. He has become their hero, their savior, and in a lilting, gorgeous terzetto. Then the mood suddenly changes. Ominous, very soft drums lead to Gianni's warning. Low brass instruments reinforce his voice. If they are discovered, the punishment will be harsh, and it includes banishment. To make it quite clear how terrible that is, he starts singing the beautiful aria, Addio Firenze, very lyrical and sentimental.
Run! Prima un avvertimento, o signori, giudizio, voi lo sapete il rischio, per chi sostituisce se stessi in luogo d'altri, in testamenti io lasciti per lui e per i complici c'è il taglio della mano e poi l'esilio. Ricordatelo bene, se fossimo scoperti
Anyway, so the notary has arrived. He's mostly singing in parlando mode, that is almost speaking with very little tone variation. And Gianni has distributed the money and the farms to the satisfaction of the family. But then tensions become high again. We hear tremolos again when it comes to the most prized items, the mule, the house, and the mills at Signa. Gianni decides, he says, the mule goes to my dear, loyal friend, Gianni Schicchi. You can imagine the shock of the family. And it's expressed in the music with loud dissonant chords, running scales, and various melodies at the same time. And every time he gives away an item to himself, it becomes worse and worse. They are so upset about him.
Lascio la mula, quella che costa 300 fiori, e la migliore, una di Toscana, al mio devoto amico, Gianni Schicchi, come fare a me? Cosa vuoi che l'importi a Gianni Schicchi di quella mula? Senti, buono Simone, lo so io perché vuole Gianni Schicchi. Lascio la casa di Firenze al mio caro devoto affezionato amico. Gianni Schicchi! Addio Firenze! Addio cielo divino! Ti saluto! Non ti disporte! Del pescador la volontà che segna mano.
So it goes. The third one also goes to Gianni Schicchi. So the family can barely constrain themselves to hold their wrath. As soon as the notary has left, they show their outrage. They call him ladro, thief, and they start looting the house. Everybody grabs something, the silver, a chair, a picture, while Gianni Schicchi chases them out of his newly acquired house. Of course, Rinuccio and Loretta are elated, and they are singing a beautiful duet, singing their love and how they met and how happy they will be. You may recognize another leitmotif there. It was earlier there in getting married in May or getting married in the spring that appears here again in their duet also. So when Gianni sees them and sees how happy they are, he thinks that their happiness is worth going to hell for. But he asks us to grant him attenuating circumstances.
Ditemi voi, signori, se i quattrini di Buoso potevan finir meglio di così. Per questa bizzarria ne m'han cacciata all'inferno. E così sia.
I think we do. At least I do. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did. And I hope that you will see Opera Theater's production on the open air stage on the Webster campus, sung in English. Singing in English is one of Opera Theater's hallmarks. They do every opera in English, and they have also sub or overtitles. Leonard Sutkin will be conducting the St. Louis Symphony, or at least some members of the St. Louis Symphony. And it leaves to me to thank you very much for listening. And now I would like to answer your questions. What questions do you have? Oops. I think I did something wrong.
Terrific presentation, Ingrid.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Do you have any questions there, Lindsay?
I don't think we had any questions in the chat. If anybody does have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them here.
So, should I do that? Yeah. Okay. The red one. Just a moment. Okay, that's better.
There you are.
Yeah, I can add a little bit, maybe explain a little bit about the Artist in Training program.
Oh, that'd be great.
It's a program for St. Louis high school students. They compete for it, and they are coached for a whole year and in singing and vocal training, but also aspects of maybe considering a career in music. And the other one is the Jardine Young Artists. It's a national competition for young singers that are already very accomplished and on the brink of having a career. So those are two wonderful programs that Opera Theater has. I think especially also for St. Louis. Another thing is, do you wonder why the mule is so important? I don't know, we have discussed that sometimes. Why is the mule so precious? You know, the mule, the house, and the mills. At the time when that happened, transportation, that was one explanation, was difficult. So to have a strong and mule that would obey orders, I think that was something worth a lot of money. I think to our ears, it sounds a little, why are they so eager to have that mule? Oh, and I want to tell you also, you can find more about Opera Theater on its website. It's just called Experience Opera, just spelled together, @org. They have the new program that's coming in the spring, and all about the singers. Sean Curry will be the director, the stage director. He has been here very often too. And then they have a slate of young singers. One of them is Jermaine Smith. He's also a St. Louis resident who had quite a career. He was singing in the Porgy and Bess. The drug dealer, what is his name? I forgot his name. Anyway,
Sport and Life.
Yeah, Sporting Life. Right, yeah. So he's back here and having a role.
Ingrid, he was the first winner of the Artist in Training group, the very first year they did it.
Oh,
Jermaine
really?
Smith was, yeah.
A while
And
ago.
he had, what, an almost 30-year career now since then.
He still looks pretty young, at least the picture.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, in this staging, I love this guy that plays Gianni Schicchi in this group of singers.
Yes.
And I don't know if you noticed, but when he's saying that the mule is worth 300 duca, he holds up two fingers, indicating while he's lying there in bed, two fingers that it's really only worth 200. I thought that was so clever.
I didn't even notice that. I have to look at it again. Oh,
Just-
I think this
just-
production is wonderful because it had so many things. It was hard to choose from because it has so many funny situations, and they match the music exactly, I think. So I was really impressed with that. I mean, it was not the filming. Well, it was so, but but I thought it was enjoyable.
I had a question. I believe you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation about how was it Gianni Schicchi, or was it all three in the triptych? Is that surrounding Dante's Inferno, or
No, it's just the Gianni Schicchi is based on Dante.
Okay, that's so, I found that really interesting. I didn't know anything about Gianni Schicchi, I guess, before the performance or before your presentation. So I mean, I'm just very curious on what you see as the parallels between the Inferno and the opera.
Well, I can tell you, Dante himself was upper echelon in Firenze, and maybe he wasn't very wealthy either, like these people here, like the relatives, but he was married to a Donati. So Bueso, the deceased, is a Donati, and his wife was a Donati. So I can imagine if he defrauded her and her family, that he was more enraged and was very harsh with his judgment. So that is the story, I think. Well, that's not the story in like he tells it, but people have found out about that. I think there's very little detail in there. So most of it is invented by Forzano. Forzano did also the Suor Angelica, and actually it was probably close to Puccini's heart because he lost a sister in influenza, but he also had a sister who had to go to a monastery. You know how they sent, at times they just designated somebody or punished somebody. In this case, it was more punishment because this young woman had a child and they never tell her about it. And until, I mean, after 7 years, she got the first time a visitor coming to see her, and she asked how her baby is. And then she said, oh, he died a few years ago. So it's very tragic, but very lyrical too. And the first one is a Verismo opera, the Il Tabarro. That's it has a beautiful intro, introduction. The place of action there is in Paris on a barge that carries goods up and down the Seine. And the beginning of that opera is like a shimmering dawn before the action starts, like almost like Debussy, similar. It's a love triangle story that doesn't end very well. Yeah. So, any more questions? No, I could have shown more music.
Well, this was quite lovely. Thank you so much for your time, Ingrid, tonight. This has been a lovely teaser to see the entire opera.
Yes. And I think the opera here really takes extraordinary care to make it safe for visitors. Mm-hmm. You know, the spacing, there are only two places together for people, and they check everybody coming in, and it's open air. I mean, they actually built a new stage in the parking lot and have the seating there. always two together and then space and two together. And if you want a single ticket, they just scratch the other one. So that's very generous, I think. And yeah, they really take great care if you go there. I hope they have enough tickets for all the people who want to go.
Yes.
Yeah. So it will be very nice to have them back.
Yes, very much so. After such a trying year.
Yes. I think I'm glad they have two happy operas, actually. The Highway one is also has a happy ending. And this one is pretty happy too, yeah, I think.
Which we'll be learning about Highway 1 USA next week here at 7 o'clock on Thursday next week.
It's very nice. It's very nice music too. I've heard in our training, we heard excerpts, and yeah, I recommend that very much too.
Great.
It's also about family and greed and opportunism, but in a very different.
Yeah, very different. It's not so funny, but it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not funny, but it does have a happy ending.
Yes, yes.
Right.
It's positive. Well, thank you very much for giving us opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much for presenting with the University City Library.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
All right. Yes. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job, Ingrid. Great job.
Great job. Bye-bye.